Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Deborah Johnson Miranda. I am the host of the Broke Adult podcast. I'm a coach with Be Money Coaching. And today I am talking with Denise Soler Cox, who is going to talk about a book that she's written and that she's going to release in August. It's going to be published in August. And it's a really important book and resonated with me personally because of all of the things that I feel and that I have gone through as a Latina in the United States, even though I wasn't born here. My mother is an immigrant, and I feel like a lot of that dynamic between mothers and daughters really hit hard. And then she'll touch a little bit. Also, she'll talk about her financial situation. But most importantly, the 10 taboos in the book are really important for any immigrant, not just Latinos. But Denise is going to talk about her experience as a Latina in the United States. And I also want to mention that she is the brainchild behind Project Enye, an amazing documentary that when I met Denise for the first time via another forum, I was like, oh my God, that rings a bell. I know something about that. And then I looked it up and then I showed it to my kids and they're like, yeah, we watched that like 10 years ago. So anyway, welcome, Denise. Thank you so much for joining me on the Broke Adult podcast. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me.
Can you please just give us a little bit of background on Project Enye and then which was released like in 2014, 15?
2016. It's
16.
actually,
Okay, so 10
yeah,
years.
10 years this month is when we released the trailer on Facebook.
Okay.
And it got over 1 million views. And so the story about how the film came about, and the film is actually called Being Enye, and the
Oh, Being
project.
Enye.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
that's right.
that's
Yes.
what I get for naming the Project Enya, and then Being Enya. That was a big mistake because it often gets confused. But so the idea for that happened in a bar in Miami in 1996. My life had totally fallen apart. I moved to Miami to follow my college sweetheart. We got engaged and broke up, which is a great thing because I'm very happily married and have a beautiful family now. But at the time, I was, picking up the pieces of this future that never happened, and I got laid off from an incredible job at the same time. And I was out at a bar with friends, just hanging out, trying to figure out my next moves. And we end up having this incredibly profound conversation about identity and about what it feels like to be first gen and
Yeah.
experience that ni de aquí ni de allá. And really, it was the very first time I had that conversation ever out
Wow.
loud. And it was 1996, so there was no internet. Internet was just starting, so there
Oh,
was
yeah.
definitely no YouTube, no Google, no nothing. There were just books. And so there were some books that I had read that had kind of hit this feeling on the periphery, but
Hmm.
never like first gen, born here, I don't know where I belong
Yeah.
conversation. And so that night is when I decided to make a film, but I had, my life was a mess. And so it
Hmm.
took 17 years for me to get the
Wow.
courage to believe that I could be a filmmaker at all.
Hmm.
And one day I just decided, okay, I'm going to do this come hell or high water. I don't know how, but I ended up making the film with an Oscar-nominated producer that's based here in Denver, Colorado.
Okay. Yeah.
And the film came out 2 years later, which was 2026. And that
Uh,
is kind of what set off my entire career.
2016.
2016. Yeah, sorry.
2016. Okay. And then from there, I imagine, you probably, because you talked to so many people and you came across, in the book, you write about how you just started, speaking and promoting the film and doing all these things to connect with people. And then people would be coming up to you, women, Latinas would be coming up to you afterwards to say, oh my God, that resonated so much with me. This is my experience. And so did any of those conversations kind of make you think, I wonder if I should now write about this? Or did that happen later?
Actually, So everything sort of started with requests to screen the film and then do Q&As, which was to me very exciting because
Okay.
I was just proud that I could even get the film done, let alone
Yeah.
that people would invite me to come and speak or even do a Q&A. And so that's sort of where it started. And then when I would get off stage, a line would form, which is pretty typical now as a speaker that I know as when a
Yeah.
speaker comes off of
Okay.
a keynote, people will line up to speak with them, right? And usually it's to get a selfie or to say, oh, I resonated with that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, usually out of about every 10 women that were waiting online to speak with me, one or two would share a
Mm.
profound secret with me, something that
Wow.
was really personal and something that, neither in the movie or in my subsequent keynotes did I ever share anything of equal, I would say, weight. Like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes for me, I felt like I hadn't earned them telling me the the types of secrets they were sharing with me. And it really just didn't make sense
Mm-hmm.
for a long time. And it wasn't until one night I did an event at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York City that I decided if this happens again, I am going to do something about it. And at the time, I thought, maybe I'll make another film, even though
Oh,
films are
okay.
incredibly expensive and they take at least 2 years. So,
Mm-hmm.
right around the time it takes to get a book done. But regardless, I thought perhaps it was another documentary. But that's actually so we actually started doing interviews. We started trying to find the story, and ultimately, I had a chance to write a book, and that's what I ultimately decided to do is write a book about this, and that's where I am now, having written this book called "What Will They Say," and that's about what I learned on the road with these women and the secrets that they shared with me.
That's a really hard thing to talk about. Like I was thinking back as I was reading the book, I was thinking of a lot of things that I grew up and you bring this up also, okay, like we don't, you don't air your dirty laundry. Um
Right.
and like for me, that was like a thing that you had to like adhere to as a kid because you're like, you don't talk about anything that is troubling you. You don't talk about, especially even public, like you don't, you can talk with your family is going to know, even though families keep secrets, but like in, airing it out, like if my mother knew how much
Mhm.
I share, about my financial situation and everything that I've been through on social media for the entire world to see, that's just like it's completely out of the realm of like her brain just does not compute. And
Mm.
so I share because I want to dismantle those taboos, and I share because I don't want people to feel alone. And I wonder if these women who were going up to you were like, she said something that touched me and I don't want to feel alone anymore. Is that Do you
Yes.
think that that's kind of something that happened?
Yes, actually, Deborah, I think that's exactly what happened. I thought at first that I hadn't earned the right to hear their stories,
Mm-mm,
and but what was happening was what you said. This is what I believe is that as soon as somebody feels so seen and validated,
mm,
and the film really validates the first gen Latino experience, right? And so what's interesting is that the next conversation right after that has to do with either belonging and talking about belonging and where someone really feels like they belong or not, or with these taboos. And the way that they showed up in these conversations with these one or two women out of 10 was the conversations were around, there were secrets, right? They were sharing secrets. But after a while, I realized that those secrets are tethered to taboos. So,
yeah.
secrets around things that are considered taboo in our culture. And incidentally, a lot of these taboos, there's a ton of crossover to other cultures, but
Oh,
because I'm
yeah.
Latino and because this
For
is,
sure.
some people are like, those things are taboo in my culture too. I'm like, yeah, I believe I get it. Like
Mhm,
a lot of these things are, and in our culture, there's certain things that are either more or less taboo than other cultures. It just
mhm,
depends.
mhm,
But regardless, I realized they were tethered to these taboos, and what I wanted to do was bring that to the surface and say, hey, listen, just because this is taboo and it seemed, and now you feel broken because that's what a lot of these women felt. They felt like there's something wrong with me. I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's just like, they felt, broken.
Yeah.
And that's not okay with me. And a lot of these taboos are outdated and they needed
Yeah.
upgrading. And so that's the purpose of the book is to do damage to our belief and subscription,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
To these taboos and to invite people to create new beliefs.
Yeah. I think that's really important, especially around relationships and like in my case, money. It's really important to acknowledge that we can have a terrible experience with money. We can be shit with money. We can be terrible with money, and we can come back from that.
Yeah.
And especially when a lot of us who emigrated and our families have this belief that um, our families have this belief that now that we live in the United States, we're rolling in the money. And so there's
Uh-huh.
this expectation that you help your family back home. And so, they have a problem talking about money, but they don't have a problem asking for money. And then when we say, hold up, like let's, I can't, I'm not a bank. And no, I can't give you, $100 or $200 or whatever every time you need it. And then we feel like we're failing, we feel the guilt and we feel like we're failing our families. And that's a taboo,
Mhm.
to setting boundaries. It's like that isn't a thing that exists.
Well,
And
especially setting boundaries with family. That's
yeah,
like
with
the
family, it's
yeah.
like, no,
Mhm.
you don't do that. How dare you? Like,
Mhm.
¿quién te crees? And
Right.
so, that's something that I, at 56, have just recently learned, that it's
Mhm.
okay to set boundaries.
Mhm.
Not everybody has to know your personal life. Not everybody has to know your medical history, your financial history, your social history. Nobody has to know anything about that. It's okay to hold some things back.
Yeah.
Um, I remember once when I was complaining to a friend of mine about something, I was like, no, whenever I say something about X to my mother, she'll, respond in a way that I don't like. And he's like, well,
Mm.
why are you telling your mother? I'm like, well, because she lives with me and because I feel like I have to share with her. And he's like, you don't have to tell your mother everything. And
Uh-huh.
I try to remind myself of that before my
Mhm.
ADHD mouth just starts blurting out things that, you know, are going to get me into trouble or are going to
Yeah.
get some kind of disapproval from my mother. And it's like,
Mhm.
it's okay to be like, it's okay to, what's the term I'm looking for? It's okay to not always be pleasing our parents. And
Yep.
it's really hard for me to just like take a step back and be like, I don't have to do this for you right now. I have to do this for me. It's really hard for
Yeah.
me to do that.
Oh, yeah, it's hard for all of us. One of the most, if not the most powerful exercise in the book is called A Good Latina Daughter in My Family Would Never. And then you fill in the blank and you go through this whole thing in the book. And I did this on a coaching call because I have a group coaching that I have been running for years. And we did this exercise and it was the most powerful exercise I have ever done with any group ever. And I'm literally giving myself the chills right now talking about how amazing and powerful that was. And just the taboo or of not like, we must always be good girls. We must
Uh-huh.
always be good girls. And
Yeah.
we all have a
Mm.
definition of we all know what that looks like. We all know what the rules are, especially in our family. And so each woman would had to answer like a good Latina daughter in my family would never. And then they shared their infractions. Like one person
Yeah.
was like, would never get a divorce, would never
Mhm.
not have kids, would
Oh my
never
God.
move away from home. Like for me, it was, I moved, my family and is from New York, but I moved to Colorado. A good Latina
Yeah.
daughter would never move so far away from home. Stuff like that. And so, but I mean, everyone was crying, but it was so
Mm.
fascinating because we had a chance to say, like what we actually would do, like our reinvented thing. We get to define good now because
Yeah.
the thing is, we're so in the book, I talk about being like in a trance, and it's like we're kind of under the spell of these taboos, you know? And so they have like powers again, like, and you're
Yeah.
feeling them literally in your body. You're feeling them as I'm talking, right? And
Yeah.
so they have like the taboos have us. And the thing is, that's how brains work. Like it's in the subconscious mind. And to push it and to be anything other than that good girl is really
Mm.
what we know of is not okay. We're like malcriada if we're against
Uh-huh.
them. If we right,
Yeah.
and we can't be that. Even if we are
Malagradecida.
Yes, and even if we are that, right? Even if we have like if we've committed those infractions, it's just impossible to sit in the truth of that, that we
Mhm.
could be that bad.
Yeah.
And so what the book does is it wakes us up. It wakes us up and it reminds us that we have a choice. But, you know, for me to say that isn't necessarily going to change anything for anyone. You have to read the whole book and do
Yeah.
the exercises,
Mhm.
and my suggestion is that you do them with other people, do them with friends that will have the same reaction and know what this feels like. And then you
Yeah.
practice like what is this? Like, why am I bumping up? Or at least to know, like I just got off of a coaching call with somebody that I've been coaching for years. And I'm like, you know that that's total, you know, good Latina daughter stuff coming up. And she's like, oh,
Yeah.
I know. And the thing is,
Mhm.
we need friends to tell us because then it's just the seeing of it, you get to see like, oh, okay, I'm just trying to be a good girl, except for that I'm a woman now. And I need to be a
Yeah.
good woman and I need to be good to myself because when I'm good to myself, I'm good to my family and good to my friends. And, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm good in all areas. But first, I must be good to myself. But
Yeah.
we must distinguish it first and then we can choose. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Does that land?
It does. And I think, and you talk about Marianismo and machismo in the book. And I think that it's like, even though I like to think of myself as, being anti-Marianismo and anti-machista, I see it all the time because, we bring these things, these internalized beliefs into this country, and those beliefs harm us. They are so harmful, not just to our family, but like in work, for example. So like at work, and you talk about, what happens in the office and in the boardroom, and it's really hard to stand up for ourselves and be like, mm-mm, no, I'm not going to do that because that's out of the realm of my experience or capability or responsibility. And those internalized things, beliefs, I don't want to say beliefs
Well,
necessarily because we don't believe in it, but we bring that into the workplace, and that is so harmful because then we don't stand up for ourselves, and if we don't stand up for ourselves, how are we going to get the promotions and the pay raises?
I mean, it's impossible. Like it really,
Mhm.
it is, it's a fluke if it happens. And so I get saying that I also had the same issue with calling them beliefs because we kind of think like, well, I know what I believe, right? And I would never
Yeah,
believe something that would be harmful, except for that it's true. We do have these embedded beliefs and they are in
yeah.
our subconscious. But for me, I like to call them codes because
Oh, okay.
they were like encoded into us. And the thing, it wasn't like some mastermind was like, doing this like in some room when we were kids. It's that we're encoded with these things when we hear all the expressions or when we
Yeah.
see our mothers responding the same way, the same like without
Mhm.
agency, right? But
Yeah,
we don't look at it like as a 5-year-old saying, "Wow, my mom doesn't have any agency or power in this conversation."
yeah, yeah.
We just see her not defending herself. We see her
Mhm.
not advocating for herself, or we see her too
Yeah. Oh my
preoccupied with
God.
el que dirán. You know what I mean? We see these things and
Yeah,
they happen multiple times a day, multiple and then over months, over years, over a lifetime. And then it's like we have perfectly talented, brilliant Latinas in the workplace
yeah,
who are waiting for someone to notice their hard work instead of them advocating
yeah.
because
Oh
if
my God.
it's like they're going to a gym and no one ever said, okay, you have to lift these things, so this weight, so that you can strengthen your bicep, right? We're weaklings in this area, and it's not our fault. It's not our fault, but it is our responsibility to not pass this down. And the
Oh
best
my God.
way to change it is to get in the gym, right? Get in the gym, start practicing. And it's not just practicing, hey, can I have a raise? It's first talking about it. That's why this book is so important, to
Yeah.
talk about these things, and
Yeah.
then to get our community around us to be there supporting us when we do go in and ask for the raise, and get the verbiage we need to have these harder conversations.
So what would you say? So, well, let me back up a little bit. So, at the end of every chapter, you have some exercises. Did you work with somebody on those exercises, or do they come from personal experience, or how did you come up with the exercises? Because they're really scary.
Oh.
They're really scary for people who haven't done them. I mean, like, I'm going to talk to my therapist about them because
Oh, that's a good idea.
I think they're really, I mean, they're brilliant, but I'm just
Thank
like,
you.
you know, they're so uncomfortable. And I know that the whole point of growing, building up those biceps, it hurts. I
It
know that.
does.
But like, how did you come up with the exercises?
Yeah, well, so I came up with them on my own, and a lot of it, honestly, is running these coaching groups for years.
Okay.
Group
Okay.
group coaching is, I always had to come up with an exercise, and so for me, when these exercises will come to me while I'm watching television or talking with friends or
Mhm.
even talking with my kids. I'll think of, or I'll get an idea like, oh my gosh, I should do something about that. And I will say the one
Okay.
that's the most powerful is "A good Latina daughter in my family would never." I don't know where that came from. Like, that just popped in my head,
But
and I was like, "Oh my
it's a
god, I
really
need to
good
do
one.
that." Yeah, and I will say, for anyone listening, just so you know, chapter 1, the exercise, is make something. So they're not all hard, but
Yeah.
the first exercise, I shared the story of being in Portugal with my daughters, and we took a
Mm.
mosaic making class,
Yeah. I
and
love
we made
that story.
little Thank you. We
It's
made
a
these
great
little
one.
fish, and, they were like little mosaic fish, and we had the best
Hmm.
time, and, you know, a big thing that's been coming up for me, and I think your listeners, I want them to know this, is I have been pushing and pushing and pushing my entire professional life, and I have really been informed by not feeling good enough, and having a lot of that
Hmm.
proving energy. Like, I gotta prove to myself, prove to the world, prove to whatever that I'm good enough. And there's something about writing this book that something snapped, like something
Yeah,
dramatically
for sure.
changed within my constitution. And I don't want to drive the way that I used to. I don't want to push the way that I used to. I still want awesome things. Like, I want this book to be on the New York Times bestseller list,
Of
but
course.
I'm not.
Yes.
Yeah, but I'm not driving it the same way that I'm bringing a different version of me, and that version of me makes things. That version of me, like, I loved crafting. I love playing the guitar. I love, like, cooking. I love, I love things. And I saw this great reel the other day, and it's like the woman or the young woman that we were when we were teenagers, like, remember what she loved and what she wanted and what made her happy. 9 times out of 10 is going to make the version that we are today happy and feel fulfilled.
Mhm.
And so the more that we can get back to her, the better. And it's interesting, when I saw that, I was like, wow, the last chapter of my book, I talk about keeping a promise that I made to my
Mhm.
16-year-old version of me. And
Yeah.
so I'm working on getting back to that, you know? And so the way to approach this book is to be in touch with that creative energy, and to
Yeah.
um and to make stuff while you're reading it, to give something to do with your hands, because it is going
Yeah.
to it's gonna take something from your heart. It's gonna require something, I mean. But when we talk about not leaving, these generational imprints, and not passing down these codes, and not passing down the trauma, like, we have to understand it's gonna hurt. It's
Mhm.
gonna hurt, because we're already encoded. But the incredible news is, I've never slept better in my life than I sleep after writing the book. It's the weirdest thing. I
Wow.
feel so in tune and locked into who I really am. And, like,
That's
um,
amazing.
yeah. And a lot of it is because I had to process a lot of the stuff. And you'll see,
Yeah.
you've read the book, you know what
Yeah. Oh
you
my
know the
God.
kind of things I had to
Yeah.
process.
Yeah. Let's talk about imposter syndrome. So in the
Yes.
book, you write that at first you thought imposter syndrome was our biggest collective issue, but the more I listened, it was cultural dissonance, the persistent frustration of trying to live by one set of rules in a world that measured us by another. And
Yes.
my response when I was reading and I was writing, I said, I think cultural dissonance hits the mark because I feel like I grew up Nicaraguan Panamanian. My mother's
Mm.
Nicaraguan, but I was born in Panama. She grew up in Panama. I was eating arroz con frijoles and patacone in my house, but the moment I stepped out my door, I had to navigate an entirely different world and other food and a language and even friends who had no idea what my home life was like. Can you expand on the imposter syndrome?
Yes.
Thinking it was our biggest collective issue, but maybe it wasn't that, but it's more cultural dissonance. Like, what's
Yes.
your take on that?
Yep, it's a hot take because we are, and you know what? I actually thought it was imposter syndrome too. So much so that I spent an inordinate amount of time developing an imposter syndrome course for Latinos
Oh,
and
okay.
like so much time. And the thing is, it's not that. It's not that. We don't lack, like, whatever, we experience like a lack of confidence in, and like, let's say, getting a raise, or once we get an opportunity, a lot of times people get an opportunity and then they don't feel worthy of said opportunity,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so that's like the big definition of imposter syndrome.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
so that the issue is not that, well, I don't want to take away from anyone who ever feels like that, because I certainly
Sure.
have felt that way,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's more a cultural value collision because of everything. We're raised to center the group. We're raised to center
Yeah.
the family. We're raised to um, give deference to the clergy, to
Yeah.
anyone who has more education, anyone who's older, to respect with,
Mhm.
you don't have to earn respect with Latinos. You are granted respect,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. Mhm.
And we're automatically humble. I know, for better or for worse, right?
Yeah.
And so we're taught to be humble to a fault. And, so we have these rules that exist that no one hands a manual and says, "Oh, hey, here are the cultural rules. Please abide by them, or you're going to feel like absolute crap." No
Mhm.
one does that. And no one certainly says when you're raised in another country like you, or brought here at a young age or what have you, no one says you're going to have a collision or you're going to collide with the exact
Yeah.
opposite value system when you get a job or
Mhm.
when you go to school. Everyone thinks the opposite. You
Yeah.
have to earn respect. For the people that live here, they expect you, they are not going to automatically respect you. You have to earn their respect. If humility is not valued. If you're too humble, people won't respect you. They'll
Mhm.
actually won't think that you care about yourself, which is not at all what it is the way that we're raised. And people here are thinking about themselves first. They're not thinking about you. Many people don't even think about their families first. They're just thinking about
Yeah.
them first. And corporate
Yes.
America
Yes.
is completely wired and set up and
Yeah.
structured for the self-reliant system. So for I call it me first and
Yeah.
versus we first, right? And so that collision is what creates self-doubt in us.
Okay.
That's what creates self-doubt, because it makes us feel like we don't know the rule book. We don't know when to talk. We're not taught to self-advocate, but then we're penalized for not speaking up for ourselves. People don't
Exactly.
know like how to treat us in corporate America because we won't say, "Oh, this is what I did." We're always giving credit to the team, which to me makes a lot of sense. Like,
Mhm.
I certainly didn't get where I am right now by myself. I recognize
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
many people had a hand in this and continue to have a hand in this, right?
Mhm.
And so if I said that, it feels like lying. It's a lie.
Oh, yeah.
And right, but
It's
our
like it's not
counterparts
telling
that
the
were
whole story.
correct. And
Yeah.
so, but you don't get ahead in American self-reliance by bringing everybody with you. You get ahead by saying you did it
Mhm.
all yourself. And so that is destabilizing in and of itself, to be raised your whole life to think one thing and then to have every measure of success be be measured by a completely different set of rules. And that is what the disabling part is. We just miscategorize it because it's popular vernacular, but it's not quite the description of it. It's not quite it. It's really the cultural collision.
I can see that a lot. Like, I remember in high school when, everybody's applying to college and whatever, and I want to be an architect, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be, whatever. And I was never encouraged to go to college. I was just like, I just figured that's something that I should do. I want to make more than minimum wage. And so I want to go to college, but it was never
Yeah.
encouraged. And then when I announced that I was going to move from my little, I grew up in Lacey, Washington, which is just outside the capital of Olympia in Washington.
Uh-huh.
And when I announced that I was going to move to Seattle to go to the University of Washington, my mom was devastated because the way she saw it was, why couldn't I be happy with a state job, a job at the state, you know, um, it's a stable job, you earn good money, you have a good pension, which of course I didn't know what that was at the time. But
Right.
it was devastating to her because she just couldn't understand why I wanted something more. And so I felt this responsibility to my mother, who was a single mom.
Yeah.
I was going to leave her. Me estás dejando,
Mm.
leaving her behind with my sister who's disabled. And I was
Mhm.
going to go live alone, which is something that Latinas don't do.
Right.
Go off and live alone somewhere. Um, and it was really hard. And I don't know how, I think that was like the first time I really defied my mother. Not
Mhm.
that she stopped me from going or told me not to go or, it was just the whole martyr thing.
Mhm.
And, um, I did it anyway. And, I was guilt ridden
Mhm.
and people couldn't understand that. Like people outside the Latino community couldn't understand that. They were just like,
Right.
you know, because they move across the country, they go to college across the country, they move and then they meet people and then they stay, they grow up in Washington, they go to California, Arizona, Florida to live. And so people couldn't and so it was really hard. And so I think that's where like that cultural dissonance came into play really hard in my late teens because I couldn't explain that to anybody who could understand. And then in my family in Panama were just like, oh my God, like, what are you doing? How are you going to leave your mother? And
Yeah.
so at the same time, I was like, but I want something more. I need to get out of this shitty little hick town and I want to go
Right.
to Seattle. And so I did. And so,
Mhm.
you know, um, it's a really hard thing to have to navigate within your own family, within your larger family, then with your community, and then with the culture, and then with the whole thing that happens, all the people that are outside your home.
Yep.
Um,
And we don't have language for it, and
no.
that's another thing that the
Mm-mm.
book I is attempting to do, or the book does, is it gives
Mm-hmm.
language to that because
Yeah.
no one, when I moved to Miami
Yeah.
from New York, I was raised in New York. When I moved to Miami,
Okay.
it was the only place I had ever lived as an adult that I actually felt at home. And it's
Okay. Huh.
because it wasn't just because most people in Miami speak Spanish, it's because collectivism was alive and
Oh,
well.
that makes
And it was
sense. Yeah.
yeah, and it was in Miami where I had that conversation at the bar with my friends and
For
where I
the,
realized for the movie. And
yeah.
so, but yet we didn't have language. So the book, what the book is doing is it's explaining how this all works. And so
Yeah.
then, like for another 19-year-old or an 18-year-old who's moving away, who feels like a malcriada for doing it, but she does it anyway,
Mm,
and then she's guilt-ridden and feels bad or
yeah.
spoiled or broken, or because eventually that kind of thinking, you just make up stuff about who you are. And the thing is, it's not true, but the culture, the outdated culture, tells us it is. And
Yeah.
so when we don't have a way to say, actually, no, I'm just being really self reliant right now, and that's my choice, right? But
Yeah.
if we don't have anyone that has the language or that understands, like a lot of times people will be friends with someone who's raised
Mm,
collective dominant, someone who's another Latina, let's say,
yeah.
or someone who is raised in an Asian culture or Africa, like someone who also has that collective dominant
Yeah.
value system, right? They'll understand. But until we have the actual language, we can't talk about it truthfully for what it
Mm-hmm.
is, and then decide, okay, no, I'm in my self-reliant era, and I'm okay
Yeah.
dealing with these guilt feelings, and that's
Yeah.
normal. And I know none of my friends that aren't Latino, they can't relate, but it's because they were raised that they were raised that
Mm-hmm.
self-reliance is good, that you need to fly the nest, that you need to be independent, and that you need to do all this stuff, and that it's actually not bad. Because anytime any of my friends would say, why, the same questions I would ask my friends, I would struggle with the exact same things. And they would say, why are you getting so upset? And then you feel crazy because you're
Yeah.
upset
Yeah.
about something. But when you say it to somebody in the culture, if you say it in the
Yeah.
culture, they're like, I know exactly why you're upset. I
Yeah.
also had that experience. And so this book is going to help untether all of these things and untangle
Yeah.
all of these things and give it a language. Because as soon as we have
Mm-hmm.
that, we can talk about it and we can at least describe the situation we're in and not make the choice to believe we're wrong, broken, or that something is wrong with us.
Yeah, and I think that's why this book is so important because it's not just for I mean, it was cathartic for me to read it even though it made me cry. I was just like, "Oh my god, this woman understands me." But it's really good
Mm,
even for my kids' generation. My kids are Gen Z, I'm Gen X, and it's really important for them to read it too because they grew up with my grandmother, but with their grandmother, my mother, all under the same roof, multi-generational household. And I don't want my kids to feel like they're weird or that they're malcriado because they want to do these things. Like
yeah.
when Maria, when my oldest kiddo, wanted to move out at the age of, I think they moved out at 21. So it was 2021. They've lived independently for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, of course I'm going to miss my kid, but I was happy for them. And no way was I going to stand in their way when they said,
Yeah.
Ma, I want to move out. They were still at university. Um, and they, you know, graduated the following year and it worked. It worked. They live 5 minutes away and
Oh.
they're an amazing kid. And so, I would never do that. Now, my mother had a hard time with it.
Mm.
Ay, se va
Mhm.
Maria. Ay. And I'm like, let them
Mhm.
go. Let
Mhm.
them make the decision to go. I've
Mhm.
got my two sons are living here with me, 22 and 20. And, they'll leave when they're ready. They'll leave when they're ready, but they're just not they're like, "No, it's good right now. We're in a good
Mhm.
place right now."
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna I've tried really hard not to do to my children what my mom did to me. I'm
Yeah.
trying really hard not to do that. Um, so I'd like to talk about dinero because after all, this is the Broke Adult podcast. Can you talk about losing money? Because I almost lost my house to foreclosure in
Oh,
2020. So,
uh-huh.
after having, filed for bankruptcy twice to do that, couldn't do it, didn't make it work. And I, you know, felt like shit. I felt like a mess. I fucked up so
Yeah.
many things. So, how about you talk about your money situation and how that all plays into this whole taboo thing and how you're doing now?
Yes, yeah. So it's interesting. I'm still getting used to talking about it publicly because
It's
and
hard. I
so
know.
just because I wrote the book on it doesn't mean that I don't struggle with it either. Because I
Of
know
course.
there's like
It's a true
the
valid feeling.
yeah, the feeling is there to resist sharing about it, but I also I wrote about it in the book, and I know we talked about it together. And yeah, so I was doing great. I actually had been doing the best I was doing for several years,
Uh-huh.
um, and was so proud of myself. The film me off on this incredible career of speaking, and I was just flying all over the country, doing about 40 to 50 engagements a year for 8 years
Wow.
straight, including the pandemic. And the pandemic, I wasn't flying. I was actually happy to be home, but I was doing these virtual events from home, and they were not like they were still at the same clip.
Oh, yeah.
And then as soon as it ended, they picked up again. And then when the new administration came, everything fell apart. And the thing is with my business is it didn't fall apart quickly. It wasn't overnight. it fell apart slowly. And so as DEI and DEI those were the budgets that were paying me to come and speak. And so as it became clear that either that departments were going to be eliminated, certain words became not okay to say.
Sure.
But the
Mm-hmm.
word belonging, which is a big part of my work, the belonging was on a banned list, banned words. And so
Oh.
I had about $200,000 in business that was on its way to closing and going to contract, and slowly but surely lost every one of those contracts. And so for me to lose a piece of business in the past, the way that my business was people would contact me. I was very, very fortunate. People would contact me, and and so I always said, okay, well, that, if that one isn't going to work out, or I didn't always say it when it happened, when people said, you know what, I lost my job, or they're eliminating my department, or we're not allowed to talk about belonging anymore, or, whatever the case was that had the event disappear. I thought, well, I've got these other events, and, as soon as those, go to contract, I'll start getting deposits. But what happened was they just slowly but surely over several months all canceled. And so I always had hope and I always felt optimistic. And in hindsight, I realized that I'll never just rely on a single uh, piece of a revenue stream ever again. That was a
Mm-hmm.
big, big lesson for me. But at the time, that was my only source of revenue. And I've done coaching on the side, but nothing could
Mm-hmm.
compare to what I was making with my speaking
Sure.
business. And
Yeah.
so, I had a choice. My life fell apart. I write about this extensively in the book, what it
Mm-hmm.
really looked like. My daughter
Mm-hmm.
was dancing in a very expensive dance school that I was really proud that I could afford to send her to, and we had to pull her out of the dance school. We had to move out of our home. We had to move out of we lived in a temporary place, and then we finally moved into this place that we're living in now. But I would call, when I say the word catastrophic, that's the best word to use. And, it was a very scary time. And,
Yeah.
this wasn't last month, but it was last year.
Mm-hmm.
And it did last for a little over a year. And so it was really, really scary. And never did I believe once that it was permanent.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really, really hard. And I had a choice to make within the circumstances, as I lost business and we stopped being able to afford certain things and to afford to, pay our bills and pay our debts.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had a choice to either hide, which is what I wanted to do. I just wanted to like crawl
Sure.
into a hole and say bye until the sun came out again, except for that when the sun came out again, I still had the same problems, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so I
Mm-hmm.
decided to like just, with everything I had in me, approach the situation with just taking radical responsibility and just letting people know what happened and where we were and what we were able to pay. And it was very humbling. And, I share this with my coaching groups. All my clients know this, that, that feeling of embarrassment is like my most hated feeling. Like I will do
Mm-hmm.
anything not to feel embarrassed. And what happened was I had this situation that caused me great embarrassment, right?
Yeah.
And I survived.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm thriving now, but I'm certainly on my way to thriving. And I would say one of the biggest, brightest lights during the entire thing was the fact that I was writing this book. Now, while it was happening, it felt like a burden because I
Mm-hmm.
had deadlines associated with this book,
Sure.
and I wasn't planning on sharing. I wasn't planning on going there when it came to money. I was going to stay on this side of not sharing about money, right? And
Yeah.
so, but
I can see
I
the
decided,
temptation.
yeah, like, why? I don't want to talk about this, right? But things got so bad at one point that I just, it kind of broke me. And I remember the day that I just decided I'm going to keep typing what I wanted. I'm just going to keep writing, letting this flow, what's coming up for me. Um, and I'm going to write the most truthful book that I could possibly
Mm-hmm.
write. And that was the gift of the whole uncertainty, of the misery, of the anger, of the rage, of all of it, right? Was
Yeah.
being able to have this book that I had deadlines that I needed to write
Mm-hmm.
so I could fulfill on the obligation of writing this
Yeah.
book. And I'm really, really proud that I chose to be honest, because I know a lot of people need to know to it's okay to make money mistakes. It's okay not to have it all together, and it's okay to talk about it. As a matter of fact, it's important to talk about it, because the more we all talk about it, the less terrible we're going to feel.
Yeah. So when did you get the go ahead for the book? Like what year?
Yeah, I signed my contract for the book, I think 2026, 2025, 2024. So,
Okay.
yeah, I think in
So
March
an
2020.
election year, and
Yeah.
then you've signed the contract for this book, and was it 2025 that the rug was pulled out from under you financially?
The rug started being pulled out that summer.
Mhm.
So, I
Of 20
started
what
feeling
year?
it 2024.
Okay.
So, I had a bunch of work. But I
Mhm.
could tell the cadence, the clip was slowing down. And because
Mhm.
I had just been going consistently for so many years,
Yeah.
and I had gotten used to every single week having another invitation in my inbox. That's just
Mhm.
what life looked like. And there was a time where I saw a dip in business,
Yeah.
and it wasn't that it might have been in 2023. I saw a slight dip, or I started feeling a slight dip, and I started doing some outreach, and boom, it came right back again with a
Mhm.
vengeance. And so I was like, okay, that was just a moment in time, but here we are back in business. And so in the
Yeah.
book I write that I like tried what I knew how to do to get business, and nothing worked. And what I did was I had gone back to the strategy, which is just doing
Mhm.
outreach, right? Just
Yep.
asking
Yep.
clients and reaching out to people, letting them know what you do. It's a simple thing, but sometimes we forget that a lot of our opportunity is sitting right there in our
Yes.
communities, right? And
Mhm.
so, but that didn't work. And it's because a lot of my clients were changing departments, losing jobs, getting
Mhm.
budgets yanked, dissolved, all kinds of stuff.
So just to be clear, so you signed the contract in 2024,
Yes.
and you had to move in 2025.
Yes. Moved
So
in
you
2025.
basically had to downsize,
Yes.
and
We
you're
went.
and you're
Mhm.
writing this book,
Yes.
and you are writing a book that hopefully, fingers crossed, will make the New York Times bestseller.
It's gonna make it. It's gonna
But
make it.
but
We're making it.
this is the thing that I think is really important, and the reason I'm focusing so much on the timeline is because I want it to be clear. I don't like to say, "If I can do it, you can do it," and, "I pulled myself up, you can do it." I'm not like that, but I
Yeah.
just want people to see the trajectory of how, you got this contract, you signed it, and things were kinda going downhill, and then all of a sudden, "Oh my god, I have to move. I have to downsize big time, and I have to do this thing, because my family is suffering financially. We have to do this thing, and now you're about to publish this book." And I think it's really important, um, to also, to show that it's never too late to try to just do something else, and also to try to change the way things are working out. Right now, you're renting, right?
Yes.
You're renting.
Mhm.
And right now, do you know if you're going to keep renting? Do you want to buy? Do you want to, maybe that's all up in the air right now.
Mhm.
But I think it's really important for people to understand that, you can be at your lowest point and not have to make big financial decisions right away.
Yes.
Um, and I think one of the things that I think is really important about this book is that it's teaching people of whatever generation. It's
Yeah.
teaching us to also look inside ourselves and to have faith in our abilities, and that our culture and how we grew up and the things that make it who we are, we can hold on to the things that provide that resilience and make us strong so that we can move forward, however that looks. And I know that sounds really vague, but people tend to, anybody tend, they tend to think, oh my God, I have this horrible financial thing that happened to me. And I would never tell anybody. I would never share. Um, and that, like I said at the beginning, that just keeps us not only closed off from other people, but it also doesn't show that we can come back, and that we don't have to make big decisions right away. I've
Right.
rented for 6 years and I was like, I don't ever want to buy a house again. But some
Mhm.
things have happened recently. Our landlords want to sell this house, the house that we're renting. So we have big decisions to make. And that's okay. I'm going to be buying a house again at 56. So, I just kind of look at it as like it is what it is. I don't like using that term, but I can't think of another way of putting it. But I
No.
think it's really important, um like you said, reach out, um and find ways to come back, but it's okay also to take our time in making these big decisions.
Yeah, and so here's something that I think is interesting that I wish I could have heard this, and I think it's going to help people. I believe that it'll help people. So we needed to move. We needed to scale down. That was clear. And we needed to move in July. So literally
Okay.
a year from next week, are like, that's when we moved to
Okay.
this side of town. My
Okay.
daughters go to school on this side of town. This is
Yes.
actually where I've wanted to live for years. I've lived in
Oh,
Denver for over 20 years, and I've always wanted to live in Wash Park. It's to me, it's my
okay.
favorite park to walk in. We have family picnics here. I just am happy on this side of town, right?
So it worked
And
out.
our girls, yeah.
Mhm.
And so what we did was we knew we needed to leave, but we couldn't find a place that we could afford. And
Mhm.
so we found a temporary place. That wasn't necessarily the
Okay.
plan, but in my searching, I
Mhm.
found a place that just, it said temporary. It said 3-month lease or something like that, right?
Uh-huh.
And the actual house was on the periphery of the park. So literally,
Oh,
I call it in the book like it's like river or oceanfront property, like but except for it's like Denver. Obviously,
yeah.
there's no ocean here. But like to live on the park, it feels like that because literally walk out the front door and there you are in this beautiful, beautiful park. It's like the central park of Denver, right? And so the only caveat was we were renting what's called a garden apartment, and garden apartment, otherwise known as a basement. And it was just a very tiny 2-bedroom apartment, 2 bed, 1 bath, very tiny, tiny for
Mhm.
us, right?
Yeah.
800 square feet, maybe. And that's where we moved. And so it brought us to this side of town so that we could walk our daughters to school because we only have one car and we've only ever had one car. And so we knew we wanted to do that. And then once we were here, we extended the lease because we had an opportunity to, and we kept looking for the right place. And now we live just a few blocks away. And so it's exactly what you just said. We didn't have to make like a massive decision and find the place and, oh my gosh, like this is going to be terrible. No, we just took the one next step we needed to take.
Yeah.
And we knew we wanted to be here. So this is where we looked. And then
Mhm.
we found the right place. And the thing is that, um, the owning and renting, I have felt for so many years guilty, bad, ashamed even that I never owned a house. And I had a therapist actually ask me over and over again, like, why do you feel so much shame about this?
Mhm.
And it's something that's so ingrained. It's like for me,
Yeah.
it was very much like if I'm successful, I should be a homeowner or home ownership means success. Except for now, I just don't believe that anymore, not for us. And I think
Yeah.
it's different for different people. But for
Mhm.
us, that is not true. And certainly for our plans and what we now understand about the market, because in the last year, I learned a lot about money. I
Mhm.
decided to learn a lot about money and investing, and we're going to be making some different choices, right?
Yeah.
And so to me, it's not right or wrong. And also I refuse to be and feel shame about that anymore, you
Mhm.
know? And so there are a lot of gifts. And the last thing I want to share about about what happened is a lot of times people say, don't share about a situation until that thing is a scar, right?
Mm.
Don't
I've never
share
heard that.
about, and
Wow.
don't share your open wounds.
Huh.
Wait until there's scars and wait until you're okay, basically. Wait until
Huh.
you've learned the lesson. Wait until whatever, right?
Mhm.
And so when I decided, you know what, I'm actually going to share from the open wound, and
Yeah.
that's where I wrote a lot of this book from, was the open wound.
Yeah.
I was making a deliberate choice, and I think it's okay. I know it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay to be
Yeah.
honest now.
Mhm.
A lot of people are suffering in silence and feel so
Yes.
ashamed about things that are going on. And it's as soon as you open up and start sharing, what I know to be true is that the right people will stand next to you and let you know you're not alone. And for so many of these situations, it's almost all you need.
I think that's really important because and I'm glad you said that, and I'm glad that you wrote this book the way you did because I at first in August 2020, I was like, no way do I want anyone to know why how I ended up in this situation.
Mm,
And I was like and then I was just I just had that feeling that, if I don't share this, then that just makes it worse.
mhm,
And so, yes, I have an open wound and I'm just going to put it all out there for everybody to see because I want to share my experience because I want people to not feel alone. Because there will be people out there who are like, I'm really embarrassed. I don't want to say this. I don't want to share this. And it's not just Latinos that do this, but it's many, 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 non-European cultures have that that whole shame thing. We're so shame focused. And that's something that I really liked about the book, even though it was really hard to, it's like I can talk about it and talk about it and talk about it, but reading it is something else because there's somebody, Denise Soler Cox, saying, oh, by the way, here are my wounds.
mhm,
And I'm like, oh, okay. It's okay that I've been doing that.
mhm. I'm glad that you felt
It's
that
like,
way. That's
okay, it's hard to look at, hard to read, but it's really important because if we don't have these conversations, then these people won't come up to us after a speaking gig. They're not going to come up to us at a book signing. They're not going to come up to us and say, thank you for writing about this. Thank you for talking about this because
mhm.
I've been wanting to share my thing, but I was afraid, I was ashamed, and now I know that you've done it, so I can do it too.
Yeah, and there's
So,
people out there that really do, and, when I talk about in the book, because some people are like, "Well, are you saying that people should just share all their secrets?" And that's not what I'm saying, but what I
yeah,
am saying is sometimes we're holding secrets that we haven't even told one person,
yeah,
and,
mhm,
and that is what I want. I want you to
yeah,
tell one person
mhm,
and lighten the load, because that,
yeah,
like,
yes,
holding all of that over a lifetime is like a burden that we don't have to carry alone. We can
yeah,
share that one.
I like that. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you so much. Um, so one last thing. Do you have an emergency fund?
We are building an emergency fund.
You're
So,
building
yes,
one. Okay, so you're
yes.
building
So we
one.
do. We have a wee
Okay,
one.
that's
And
okay.
we had one
That's okay.
before too, which was, we had one before. It's just sometimes emergencies, cost more than thousands of dollars. Like, sometimes they cost tens of thousands of dollars, you
Yeah,
know?
but, you
So,
know,
yeah,
$400, $500 is a great place to start,
it
and that's what
is.
I tell people. I tell clients, it doesn't have to be, they're like, oh, 6 months worth of, whatever. Well, that's so overwhelming. You have to start
Yeah.
somewhere. So I just had to ask that because I always ask people, do you have an emergency fund? Do you have an emergency fund?
Yeah.
Or are
Yeah.
you building one? Which is the important
Right.
thing. Building one is more
Yes.
important than having one because you're doing your thing. Do you have like a money motto or a motto about taboos or something like a dicho that you made up that you would like to share?
Um, I love that. So one thing I think is I don't have like a dicho like specifically, but I definitely have something that I tell myself when I spend money.
Okay.
And so anytime I like buy a coffee, even though now I actually make my own coffee, I used to buy Starbucks every single day, but now I make instant cafe de olla, and I actually
Ooh,
have my own ritual. Like the like Nescafe has like their own little thing, and it's
okay.
I actually really enjoy my little ritual with it every morning, and it's like with oat milk and anyway, but anytime I do spend money, I always like say like this is coming back to me. Like money flows, money flows. You don't lose it. You don't when you spend it, it's not gone. Like that conditioning though is so alive and well in my mind. And so to override it, it's just something that I'm constantly saying, you know? And it really is true. It's funny how certain things happen where you end up having a hard time spending money on X, let's say, like, another thing that happened with us over the year that this was all going down was that our car that had been functioning perfectly fine needed thousands of dollars in repairs.
Mhm.
And like, I mean, what do you do? You know?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, but what was interesting is we'd always get like if it was like a $2,000 repair, somehow, some way, a $2,000 opportunity would come up. Or
Ah,
you know what I
okay.
mean? So like life tends to I don't know why, but it evens out. It always evens out. And that's the whole premise of the book is this idea called thermal equilibrium. And it's a do I have time to explain it?
Yes. Yes, please. I
Okay.
wanna hear about this.
Yeah.
I wanna hear you explain it. Yeah.
Yeah. So before anything ever fell apart, my daughter was in AP Physics, and every day I have great relationships with my kids, and I have two daughters. And when my daughter came home from high school one day, she was sitting at the counter, and I was like, either filling up the dishwasher or emptying it, one of the two. And she was sharing with me about something she had learned in AP Physics, and that was this concept of thermal equilibrium, and it's basically that warmth always tries to warm up cold spaces. It doesn't work in the
Oh,
reverse. So cold. So like she said, think of a cabin in the woods, like
oh,
what you would say, or if you ever lived in New York where I'm from, or even in Denver,
uh-huh,
like if you're in a warm home, right? A
uh-huh,
lot of times if someone opens the door, it
uh-huh.
feels like the cold is coming in. That's what, don't let the cold come in, right? But
Oh,
it's not
yeah.
the cold isn't actually coming in. The warmth
Ok
in your home is leaving. It's leaving the house. And
Oh,
it's a principle in physics that warmth tries to warm up cold spaces. And so if you
uh,
think about all of our lives like a house, there are different rooms that we've left that we've shut the door on, and those rooms remain cold because if the door was open,
okay,
they would be warm. Okay? So think about it
okay.
like that. And
Okay.
so, like, if all the doors were open in the house, then
Uh-huh.
every room, because of how physics works and warmth and cold works, if every door was open, every room would be warm. But
Okay.
because we've closed certain doors, one door can be never ever talk about money, even if you're struggling with money,
I
especially if you're
see.
struggling with money. Don't you ever share with anybody that you're struggling ever, right? So we close the door.
Yeah.
Or let's say we declare bankruptcy and we like, I'm never going to tell anybody. I'm so embarrassed and ashamed, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. We're going to close that door. Or let's say something terrible happens to us and we never talk about it, close that door. And then we're living in homes that some rooms are warm and other rooms are cold. And the thing
Okay.
is, we live our lives and believe that we're fine with all of these freezers. Like we've got these rooms that,
Yeah.
it's like Monica's closet in Friends, like the place is perfectly clean and organized, but if you open that closet, all the disorganization and crap is going to fall out,
Oh,
right? So
okay.
we live our lives like we're
Wow.
fine, but we have all these freezers. And then we think, this isn't working. My life isn't working. That relationship isn't working.
Yeah.
And the premise of the book is get warm, open up those
Mhm.
doors, let the warmth
Mhm.
flow in and let those cold spaces thaw. And that
Okay.
is going to feel
Yeah.
hard because while I was writing the book, I was remembering things that had happened to me. And
Yeah.
it was so hard to write about those things, but
Mhm.
in the writing and the remembering, I was opening those doors and I was
Yeah.
healing. And so my house is warm now. Of course, it's always
Yeah.
different degrees. Like I'm
Sure.
still working on some rooms, right? But but the invitation really is, even if you just have to crack the door open and let the room thaw slowly, still let it thaw. Be willing to warm up those spaces in your life. That's where the answer is. The answer is to let the
Yeah.
whole thing get warm.
I can see that because I can see, like, in terms of the book, I can see that I can understand it when I think of the book because, we gravitate toward warmth. The warmth of a person. Oh, they're so warm. She's such a warm person. They're such a warm family. And I can see that in respect to the book because it helped me feel not so alone. Like, it made me
Mm.
feel close, like I I understand where Denise is coming from, type of
Mhm.
thing. Um, and I think that's a great analogy. Is that I guess an analogy
Yes.
using the
Yeah,
thermal?
yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Yep.
great way to think about it. With with any situation, I guess, or with any circumstance that you have in your life, I think it's really I like that. I really like.
Thank you. And I mean, the whole idea, it's an act of warmth. It's an act of generosity, right? To be honest about our
Yeah,
lives and to share, for you to share about your bankruptcies and for me to share about the $200,000 and having to move and
yeah,
all that stuff, right? And that's a warm, that's an act of warmth. Making
mhm.
someone feel less alone is warm.
Yes, yes.
Pretending like we have it all together, right? Abiding by the quería, and
Mhm,
pretending, lying, presenting ourselves
mhm.
as if something is true when it's not true is cold. And the thing is, it's
Yeah,
cold, so it's going to interfere with your relationships, and it's going to
mhm.
interfere with your sense of
For sure.
community, and it's going to
Yeah.
feel lonely,
Yes,
which
yes,
is cold.
yes. Because you're not with another person, and you don't have to physically be with another person. It's just,
Right.
it's closing yourself off is very lonely and very not warm. Like, I can see that.
Mhm.
I like that analogy. That's interesting. I'm gonna have to,
Thank
like,
you.
make a copy of it from the galley or something and stick it on my wall where I can see that
Yeah.
because that's a really good thing to share. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I talk about this concept that I coined called sacred thermal equilibrium, and that's where it gets even more in depth about how this affects us, you know? So, but
Yeah.
it's just very simple. It's just get warm. And the places in your life where you're cold, get warm. And you don't have to do it tomorrow. You can literally just open the room by one crack,
Yeah.
just to one person.
Little by little. Nothing has to be done big and overnight. It can be done little by little, poco a poco.
Yes. Absolutely.
Wow.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Denise. Thank
Oh,
you
you're so
so
welcome.
much for the generosity of the book and for being here with me today. I'm so looking forward to August when it's going to be published. Can you please remind me of the date, the
Yes,
publishing
so
date?
the publishing date is August 18th, and this
Okay,
is the book. It's called What Will They
let's look at
Say?
it. Mhm.
And it's coming out in English and in Spanish. And
What?
yes, and which is very rare for a book to come out in
Oh,
both languages at the
I
same
thought it would do.
time.
Wow. And I know that you recorded it or you
Yes,
narrated it.
yes,
I
I
saw
yeah,
that on your Instagram.
yes, I did that,
Yay.
like, over the course of 7 days, and
Really?
so, yeah, it took a
Wow.
long time,
Okay.
and because it just well, the actual book, it was so hard for me to get through emotionally,
Sure.
and also because I had such a challenging schedule. I flew to LA, I had 2 events in LA, I
Oh,
have stuff going on here, so
oh,
I devoted about 4 hours a day working on it, and,
wow. Busy,
yeah,
busy.
it took 7 days, to do it, but, we are going for, we are going for I don't even know how we would say it, I'm still learning, but we are going to be on the New York Times bestseller list,
You are.
and obviously, you don't see a lot of Latinos are on the New York Times bestseller list, you
Yeah,
don't see a lot
I
of
know.
no names. And so my ask for your audience is if they would please pre-order the book, because their
Yes.
pre-orders will count towards there's a count of books that gets tallied in that first week.
Okay.
And all of those, any book that's bought between now and the week of August 18th will count towards that tally. And
Okay.
so the New York Times has a few different ways that it determines who should be on the list. And
Okay.
so if I can reach over, a few thousand books on, pre-sold, then I've got a chance. And so that is what I'm
Oh, okay.
asking
Okay.
for, is just to spend, it's going to be $29, and some
Okay.
people are buying it and they're like, okay, I'm going to share it with my primas or with my sisters or
Yes.
my friends. We're going to pass it around and we're going to read it together, because that's really the book. The book is best read in community.
Yeah.
And
So we can all
there's a
cry
line,
together
so we can all cry together, and so we can all heal together.
and heal together. So the book is What Will They Say by Denise Soler Cox, and it will be published August 18th. I'm going to put in the show notes a link to pre-order the book.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
And I
thank you
appreciate
so
anyone
much.
listening, if you're able to buy the book, to please pre-order it before August 18th.
Yes, we'll do that for sure. I'll put that in there
Thank
so that we
you.
can have that. So thank you so much, Denise. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you.